Experts are always extremely good at communicating very complex messages in simple ways.
Ha!
Confuse and lose.
True. If you confuse, you lose. So what we're really talking about today is messaging, and we've got some pointers to help you get your message spot on so that it can cut through.
So here's the thing, right? As a communications person, as filmmakers, as content creators, you or the person you're working with might actually know too much about the topic you're communicating. They might be too expert. They might be a PhD. They might have studied their topic at a university for more than 5 years, and that's going to cause you issues when you're trying to make your message as simple and as clear as it can be for your audience. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely agree. And it can even just be industry jargon. You know, people, you forget when you work in a particular industry that there's phrases, expressions, ways of clarifying and defining things that are so unique that people outside of your industry don't actually know what they mean.
We call this stuff assumed knowledge, and you want to be really careful about what you assume your audience knows. You need to give this a lot of thought and consideration. And I think the new course that you've developed, Sue, Define Your Ideal Audience, really helps to unpack some of that. Do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, and I think a big part of the reason we actually created the course, Define Your Ideal Audience, is because when you understand who your audience are, when you understand what their views and their values and their background is, you can create and craft messages that are really tailored for them. So even if you've, an amazing expert in your field, you can actually speak in ways that people can take on board and understand.
Okay, so just a reminder on that, shameless plug, voiceover guy.
Define your ideal audience and learn to create projects people will climb over each other to see.
That's the one. Check that out. Now, so the first point here is that if you're an expert or you're working with an expert, beware. Make sure that you're not assuming too much knowledge from your audience, and work really hard at simplifying those messages so that they cut through.
The next thing you've got to think about is what's at stake. So when you're thinking about your message, what is at stake?
Well, stakes are really about what makes the topic you're talking about matter to your audience.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if the message you're giving them works or doesn't work, what's at stake if people don't take on that message? What's the outcome if they do take on the message? So you're kind of just trying to break down, what are you really trying to achieve?
And it really always comes back to, what does your audience really care about as it relates to the topic that you're communicating with them? Now, the last thing you need to keep in mind is being really clear on what is the single thing you really need your audience to remember.
It's hard sometimes because you want your audience to do quite a few different things, but you've really got to pinpoint what's that one thing, what is the one call to action, what is the one takeaway message you really want them to take.
So if you're an expert or you're working with an expert, this might be really tough for you because you might really be desperate to get your audience to do multiple things, and that's okay. But the problem with multiple calls to action is often they fall short and they're ineffective. So you need to work really hard to distill down your call to action to the one most important thing they can do next, and then you take them on a journey.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because it comes back to if you confuse, you lose. So when you ask people to do multiple things, the first thing they'll do is go, so what was the first thing? And you've lost them. So if you're just asking them to do one thing, do you want them to go to a website? Do you want them to sign a petition? Do you want them to watch the next video? Do you want, whatever it is, you just need to ask them to do one thing. What is the single most important thing that can progress your issue?
Voiceover guy.
If you confuse, you lose.
All right, so we actually covered quite a few steps in this video, but the 3 key takeaways that we'd really love for you to take on board when you're trying to simplify your message are: who is the audience? Who are you trying to speak to? What's at stake? What's the most important thing you want your audience to do once they've consumed your message? 3 things.
That's right. We don't want to lose. We want to win here. So to win, we need to simplify. We don't want to tie our videos up with too much technical jargon that our audience cannot understand, and we don't want to give them too many things to do so that they don't actually know how to respond to the message you've given them.
So we actually made another video called the Moonshine Mashup #3, and that was all about how what are the ingredients for impactful messaging. So you might want to check that one out just to really solidify what is good messaging and how to simplify your message.